is Madeline, back to do my first episode with you guys. I'm so excited to finally release this one. This episode, I will be talking about difficulties that we've had in our relationship. So, after my husband and I, or I guess my boyfriend at the time, had been talking on the phone for a year plus, we had finally been able to spend almost 6 months in much closer proximity. And during the last 2 months or so, we began running into things we needed to overcome, work through, and resolve. Something you have to realize about relationships, especially a super close one like dating or marriage, is that you will run into difficulties. There's no way around that, because you are putting two imperfect people together. So how can you expect that to make a perfect situation? It's not possible or realistic. Something I came across recently really stuck out with me. It was a quote that said, "You never marry the right person." I was like, okay, wow, that doesn't sound terrifying at all. But what it really is trying to say is that we can easily have these expectations or perceptions when we are dating someone that they are like pure gold, no issues, and that we think we've found the person that will finally accept us for who we are, not try to change us, no strings attached. The end. Happily ever after. Okay. Sorry to burst your little fairy tale bubble, but things don't work like that. And depending on how your current or future relationship may go, you either figure that out in dating or in marriage. For us, we figured that out in dating. To be honest though, we didn't come in with these high expectations that this relationship was going to be perfect. In fact, it was a fairly reasonable view that we knew we were going to need to work on things. We just weren't sure what they were and when we would have to do it. Before I briefly recap some of the difficulties we've had, I'd like to make this point clear and maybe offer some advice at the same time. Ben and I have tried our best to keep the heart of our relationship protected. We do not want to go talking behind the other person's back or putting them down, because that is definitely not healthy and only tends towards tearing the relationship down. Instead, we want to keep that person in as positive as light as possible, while still acknowledging the issue, as well as maintain that it could be a me issue instead of a you issue. With that being said, here's a few examples. Number 1. One of the first things we encountered was communication. I will talk a little bit more about this in a later video, but this was definitely a difficulty we had early on. Number 2. Another was, how do I let him know when I'm upset or frustrated about something so that we can deal with it and I don't just shut down? This is something I've still been working on, but there are a few things I discovered. First, I had to acknowledge that there are things that happened in my younger years that have shaped me into who I am now. And those habits I formed as a result are not necessarily good, and I may have to retrain myself to think another way. This applies to multiple areas of a relationship too, not just this. Second, I needed to realize that I am hurting the other person just as much, if not more, than I am hurting myself. And I am probably being selfish by withholding those feelings because they care about me. Third, this comes back to communication, but I need to learn how to tell him things that will help me work through it. Like, for instance, I need time to think and process it before I can just spit it out. Fourth, I need to be willing to accept that maybe that scenario wasn't something I should have been upset about, and acknowledge that I should not have been so petty and just overlook the situation. Fifth, this is one of the biggest ones. I need to look back and ask myself, am I being selfish and self-centered? We rarely ever think of ourselves in this light, but after having that revelation recently, I realized how important it is that we be aware of this issue. Am I being upset just because I wish he had done it this way? Or want him to notice something I did and he didn't do that, so therefore I should be mad at him? And on and on and on. There are so many things that can attribute to petty anger simply because we are looking at ourselves and thinking we have a right to be mad. There can be multiple other things for different individuals, but I can see and have heard of countless other couples that have dealt with similar things. And most often, it goes back to one or more of these points. Number 3. Difficulty 3, I was trying to hold my own. Okay girls, here's one for you. But guys, please still listen, as you can understand girls better. If y'all have read your Bibles, you've probably encountered Ephesians chapter 5 at one point and read the part about wives being in submission to your husbands. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Ephesians 5:22. The world today is repulsed by that term, especially with women's rights and equality being so prevalent. I don't disagree that women, in many ways in society, have been overlooked and stepped on, and that is not right at all. But let me ask you this: how far are you going to take it? Have you ever really considered what is God's order in this? Why does this verse exist, and am I willing to acknowledge it? God's order is that wives are to submit to their husbands because He gave them that authority in our lives. And that relationship between husband and wife is to be a replication of Christ and the church. The husband, a picture of Christ, and the wife, a picture of the church. We are not taking a position as wives that we are inadequate and weak, but one that honors the Lord and acknowledges His will in our lives, and allows Him to lead us through our husbands as He does the church through Christ. At the same time, He also calls husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church. But that is not our responsibility to hold them accountable for that. We are to focus on the role and position the Lord has given to us and do our best to fulfill it. The issue that was caused here on my part was that I had not recognized that in certain areas I was not submitting to Him or allowing Him to lead. But it was subtle because I was justifying it in my head. As much as I knew that verse to be true, I had to then make the conscious effort to act it out. Although we are not married, the same principle can still manifest itself, that whatever you put on in dating will only increase in marriage because you can become that much closer. So girls, no knock on you, but please, please, please be aware of this, and do not try to equalize yourself to Him, but rather fulfill your God-given role and pray for your husband or boyfriend, that he would be open to the Lord leading him, and that you would be able to love and serve Him rightly. On that note, I also want to say to you girls out there, you should not feel like you have to equalize yourself with your husband or your boyfriend or any of the males in your life. First of all, God did not make us unequal as men and women. He made us equal but different, and that's hard for some people to grasp. You have to recognize here that just because women can do things or can't do things that men can or can't do does not mean that we are inferior. That's the way the world has interpreted it, to mean that being submissive is equal to that of being like inferior or underneath or less worthy than your husband, and that is totally not true. The fact of the matter is, and I really like this explanation or picture that has been brought out to me multiple times, is that when the Lord created Adam and Eve, when He created Eve, He took her from Adam's side. He took her from Adam's rib, not from, his skull, his head to be over him, or from his foot to be stepped on. He took her from his side to stand beside him, to support him, to be partners together, and that is what the equality is. We are no less inferior or worthless than men, but we have different qualities in them. Men are qualified to do many different things that women either physically can't do, it's more difficult for them, or whatever it may be, but that does not mean we are inferior, and I can't stress that enough. I know I've said that word a lot, but please just recognize that you have so many important roles in life that men can't even grasp, like birth, for instance. Obviously, men can't physically give birth, their bodies aren't meant to do that. And also to take care of the children, women are physically proven to have more of a loving, caring nature than most men. That's just the way we're made. It's nothing against men at all, because they obviously can love their wives like super well, and they can love other people super well. But the way the woman's brain is made is to bear children, to love them, to nourish them, to cherish them, to bring them up. And that is something that's a lot more difficult for men to do because of the way that they're made. Another way you can look at it is that it's sort of like puzzle pieces fitting together. If you have things that are always the same, like if you have this exact puzzle piece next to each other, like, you're not gonna get the whole puzzle. You're not gonna get the whole picture. You have to have different parts fitting together perfectly to make that whole picture of the puzzle. And that's basically what men and women are. When you put them together, women have attributes that complement men's, and men have characteristics that complement women's. And that's not something to all of a sudden take and be like, oh, we're supposed to be submissive to them, therefore we're inferior, and that's a derogatory term. That's not what submission means. And I can definitely cover that in a different topic, in a different episode. But yeah, I just wanted to cover that for now. All that being said, these were just a few difficulties that we've dealt with. I won't delve into all the little things at this time, and it may not be necessary anyways, but I'll probably cover some of them in the later podcasts to come. Please let me know if you have any questions about all this. I am more than happy to answer them, and we will hopefully see you all in the next podcast.